characters. Sorry, that was Nora that just ran by. Excuse me. Favor and like and blah, blah. Oh my God, what is it? Iona's it like the seconds the while they might the art. Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Heather and as always I'm reading with a vengeance and I hope you are too. If you're new to my channel, very warm welcome to you. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I was sat here recording a little snippet for my horror reading vlog and I thought, well, since I'm already all set up and got my hair done, I mean, as much as this is my hair done, I thought I'd just do a quick little update for you of some books that I have read somewhat recently. Yeah, do a little catch up and talk to you about some books. So I'm gonna just jump right into it so I can get this thing going. I'm really hoping that Nora will make an appearance. We are still in the process of acclimatizing her to the other pets in the household. And so we have a schedule of when Nora is in her room and the other two are out and about, and then we swap it and the other two are in their rooms and Nora comes out, and I need to get Nora's toy from under the couch right now or else she will be a distraction. Hold on one moment. Okay, so I still might be distracted by Nora because she is running around the floor with her toy, but hopefully she'll make an appearance. We'll see. She's a little camera shy. So let's get started with the books. The first book I'm going to talk to you about is Heartstopper Volume 5. So this follows Nick and Charlie. This is a very popular graphic novel series by Alice Oseman, I forgot to mention. Yeah, this is Volume 5. You know, of course, it's hard to talk about the plot when you're in number 5 in the series without doing any spoilers, but this is such a popular series. I think you kind of know what's going on. But in each volume, Nick and Charlie, who are these young boys or teenagers who are very different personality-wise. I think Nick, if I get him confused, I'm sorry, but one of them is the outgoing jock, and then the other one is the studious, soft-spoken, shy boy. But anyways, in the first volume, they meet and they fall in love. Each volume, they kind of progress in their relationship. In Volume 5, they have told each other that they love each other and they are contemplating spending the night together. So that's where we are. I read the first one, I don't know, couple years ago, and it's so sweet and so cute. I decided to carry on with the series. It's kind of lost its luster for me, but I absolutely recommend the series. It's just so cute and sweet, and the artistry is rather simplistic, but in such a sweet way. She does facial expressions just perfectly. I mean, you see when they are embarrassed or, you know, blushing or shy or awkward or sad or heartbroken. I mean, you really just see the emotions, and then just the story is just sweet. I enjoyed this volume. Will I read Volume 6? Probably, just because I want to finish the series. I mean, I'm 5 in, so. Next up, brace yourselves for another unpopular opinion by this girl about a much loved author. But this is the first book that I've read by this author that was not really highly regarded. And the author I'm talking about is Fredrik Backman. I recently talked about his most recent book, My Friends, which I thought was just okay. It kind of annoyed me in some spots, but that's the first book I've talked about. This book I read several months before that, and I was so disappointed because it was the first book I read by him that I even liked less than My Friends. And the book I'm talking about is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry. This one follows 7-year-old Elsie, who is a precocious young girl whose best friend is her grandmother. And her grandmother is 77 years old and she is batshit crazy, but she adores her granddaughter and she tells her bedtime stories every night that are really detailed, fairy tale-like stories that have very specific details that if it wasn't a fairy tale, you would wonder about whether or not they were actually true stories. Elsie and her grandmother just absolutely adore each other. Well, then, of course, in Bachman's style, Elsie's grandmother dies, but she leaves Elsie a series of letters and instructions and sends Elsie on a journey to talk to different people, to apologize to them for something or other for her grandmother. Through this journey, Elsie meets a variety of different people and personalities and people who are dealing with their own hardships, who come across in a certain way because of what they're dealing with in their life. Very, very Bachman-esque. It's a very sweet story. It's a very cute story, but I had problems with it. You know, the 7-year-old talked and behaved not like your average 7-year-old. I mean, she is described as precocious, but there was just something that just didn't sit right with me with just how mature she was. It's been a minute since I've read this. The bones of the story is just very much what Bachman writes about. You know, as Elsie's going on her quest and she is delivering these apologies to these different people, she's starting to learn secrets about her grandmother's past, and she is connecting these people and relationships that her grandmother had with these people, and she's seeing a connection between the real life and the stories, the bedtime stories that her grandmother would tell her. You know, one thing that Fredman Bachman does absolutely masterfully and beautifully is reveals the complexity of human nature. When you do that through the eyes of a child, it can make it even more delightful to read, but I don't think it was just executed as well as it could have been in this story. The other thing that is beautiful about the story, the quest that her grandmother sends her on, is Elsie starts to learn that it's okay to be different, because that is why Elsie is so close with her grandmother to begin with, is she doesn't really have many friends. She's kind of viewed as an outcast at school. I mean, even her parents and, you know, the people closest to her view her as different. And her grandmother kind of shines a light on the fact that it's okay, and sometimes it's even better to be different and to stand out. So I recognize that, you know, that's the message behind this book. I just didn't really like the way it was executed. Elsa kind of got on my last nerve, as many 7-year-olds do. I think I would have enjoyed this more if it was maybe a 12-year-old. So yeah, this one was a little bit of a disappointment for me. I really need to read The Winners. I think that's the last book I have of Fredman Bachman's that I haven't read yet. And The Winners is the third in the Beartown trilogy, which I love so much. He'll be an automatic read for me. Fear not. But this one it didn't work for me. The next book I want to talk to you about is The Authenticity Project by Claire Pooley. I was very much looking forward to this book because I read Pooley's Iona Iverson's Rules for Commuting, which I loved. It was one of my favorites of the year that I read it. And then I read her most recent book, which was How to Age Disgracefully, which was also really, really cute. And so then, of course, I wanted to read The Authenticity Project, which I think was her debut novel. I could just be making that up, so don't quote me on that. But this one I liked, I didn't love. This one follows a group of characters, much like Iona Iverson. You have a group of characters that don't know each other, and they are brought together and develop unlikely friendships. So you start with Julian, who is a once famous artist, and he is going through it because his wife has recently died. And in trying to get through his grief and take up his time and take his mind off of his own grief, he does kind of a social experiment, and he gets a journal. He writes what he considers his own truth in this journal, and then he leaves it behind in this popular cafe. The cafe is owned by Monica. Monica decides to write her own truth about her desire to have a family, a husband and a child. And then she leaves that behind in the wine bar across the street. And it goes from there, and you meet different characters who end up writing their own truths in this notebook, and then they ultimately connect in one way or another. Some of the other characters are an Australian tourist, because I think this takes place in England, as I think all of Publi's stories do. So we have an Australian tourist, we have a young influencer who, of course, her personal life isn't at all like the life that she portrays in her social media feed. We have this charming man named Hazard, who is an addict and he's trying to get sober. So you have this cast of very different, very eclectic personalities, and they all have their very relatable stuff that they're going through. And through reading other people's truths and then also writing down their own uncomfortable truths in this journal, they go through self-discovery, they connect with other people. They learn the value of their own vulnerability can lead to honest connections with other humans, which I just think is lovely. She really, Claire Pooley really writes connection between humans really, really well. I love her writing. I will say that of the 3 books that I've read by this author, this was my least favorite, but that's really not saying much because I absolutely loved Iona Iverson, and I really enjoyed How to Age Disgracefully. I liked this one, but my bar was set so high that it fell short a little bit. I didn't think that the characters were as engaging as the ones that were in her in the other 2 books that I've read by her. But the connections that they make and how they make them, it's there. She does it well. She does this type of story well. She's another auto-buy author. For me, I just like what she does with human connection and developing friendships. Unlikely friendships, which I think is kind of her hallmark for her characters. And of course, she's also tackling themes of, loneliness, identity, the challenges of social media, really up-to-date stuff. But then the other stuff is just, as old as time and always enjoyable for me to read. The next book I read was The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. Ugh, my heart aches right now just thinking about it. This one I am late to the party on. When was it published? So published in 2019, won the Pulitzer Prize in 2020. There's a limited series, I think. I forget which platform, and I definitely want to see it. I don't know what took me so long to read this book, but if you don't know, this one follows mostly Elwood. It's 1960s Tallahassee, Florida. Elwood is a promising young student. He is on his way to college. He is hitchhiking, I believe, to school when he gets picked up by somebody. I remember as I was reading it, I'm like, don't get in the car, don't get in the car. But he gets in the car and he is ultimately falsely accused of car theft, and he is sent to the Nickel Academy. And the Nickel Academy is based off the real life school, the Dozier School for Boys, that was open for over 100 years, only just closed in 2011. It's got a terrible, terrible, but rightfully earned reputation of violence and abuse and indignities that you cannot even imagine. He gets into the Nickel Academy. He then meets Turner, another student at the academy who is more of a pragmatist and more of a cynic when it comes to life. And Turner, in their friendship, kind of gives Elwood tips on how to survive. And so that's really kind of the bulk of the story, is Elwood and Turner's friendship in the Nickel Academy. And the story is being told by Elwood in the future. He is kind of telling the story from present day, I believe sometime in the 1970s, and he's telling the story of what happened to him in the early 60s at the academy. And yeah, most of the story is Elwood and Turner's friendship and their very different approach to survival at the Nickel Academy. Elwood is very optimistic. He's very idealistic. He wants to seek justice and clear his name and then carry on with his life. Whereas Turner is way more of a cynic, and he believes that scheming and doing what you have to do to survive anything, no matter what, in order to survive is the path to making it through the Nickel Academy. I think I would have enjoyed this more, the actual reading process and really getting into Elwood and Turner's story, had I not read Tananarive Dew's The Reformatory before. So if it sounds familiar, the Dozier School for Boys, Dew's The Reformatory is one of my all-time favorite books. She based the Reformatory in her book on the very same school, and you're dealing with the same abuses and horrors that happened at the Dozier School for Boys in that book. The main difference, well, there's a lot of differences. The Reformatory adds a supernatural element to it, kind of a ghost story element to it, which was brilliant, but it's no less touching and heartwarming and heart-wrenching than the Nickel Boys. A lot of the abuse is not on the page in the Nickel Boys as much as it is on the page in the Reformatory, which I appreciated, but I really think that, it's just more subtle in the Nickel Boys. So anyways, as I'm reading this, I'm not as moved by Elwood and Turner's story. Unfortunately, I'm kind of embarrassed to say that now. It is a moving story, but I guess I'm just so biased towards the Reformatory. I was so incredibly blown away by that book. And I had never heard of the Dozier School for Boys until I read the Reformatory. And so it was just very eye-opening for me. And so with this book, I was just like, okay, I didn't feel like it was offering anything new until I got to the end. The end of this book, you guys, and of course I'm not going to spoil it for you. And don't read the summary in like Wikipedia or an AI summary or anything like that, because it spoils it for you. So don't do that. If you haven't read this book and you have your eye on it, go into it with as little information as you can. It's absolutely beautifully written. And yeah, that ending just smacked me in the face. And served me right for not paying as much attention as I should have been. But wow, brilliant ending. It bumped it up. It just made it. It's one of those books, I'm not a rereader, but it's one of those books that makes me wish I was. I would love to reread, even though, rereading a book where there's that much of a twist and that much of a wow moment at the end is kind of this was really good. If you are unfamiliar with the Dozier School for Boys, beware. If you have read the Reformatory and you really loved it and you like that story, read the Nickel Boys. Would recommend. Next book I want to talk to you about is In Memoriam by Alice Wynne. This has been recommended to me many, many times by many people. I listened to it as an audiobook. This one follows two young boys at an English boarding school. We have Sydney and Henry, I believe. It is 1914. So we are right on the cusp of World War I. This is before the Great War, so people, when they view going off to war, they're still really, really idealistic about it, have hero complexes. And at the center of this story is the budding love between Henry and Sydney. And of course, again, we're talking about 1914. So it is forbidden, and there are many, many challenges that they face. They fall in love at boarding school, but then they separately go off to fight in World War I. So because of the time frame and the societal views about homosexuality and the societal views about war, both Henry and Sydney, not only are they kind of dealing with their own repressed feelings for the other, but they're dealing with the pressures of you know, the anti-gay sentiment that they are surrounded by. And then we're also dealing with the deep emotional and psychological toll war takes on a young mind. And of course, during this time frame, not only are we dealing with all of those obstacles and all of those taboos and the challenges of being young and gay in 1914, but you're also dealing with, even if you weren't gay, you're dealing with the pressure of meeting the societal expectations, especially in England at the time. First 40% of the book was for me very, very slow, very, very literary. It's beautifully written. It was very, very slow going. However, so at that 40% mark, you're at the end of, I believe, part 1, and there's a thing that happens, and no spoilers here, but there's a thing that happens, and after that thing happens, then I could not put this book down. The last 60% of the book really flew for me. Really, really gut-wrenching and heart-wrenching. And you really feel for these boys for so many reasons. What I thought was interesting, which I found out after I read the book, because anytime I finish a book, I do, I don't know, like a little bit more of a deep dive research into the background of why the author wrote about it and all this other stuff. But anyways, but In Memoriam can also refer to a poem written by Lord Tennyson that expresses his grief over the loss of his friend, I believe, was it Arthur? Yes, death of his close friend Arthur Henry Hallam. So the poem is called In Memoriam AHH. It basically just kind of chronicles his grief and sorrow, and it makes for a perfect title for this particular novel. I digress. I was pretty impressed with the fact that this is a debut novel. The story is, I mean, we've got themes of grief, forbidden love, the impact of war, and all of these things all taking place during World War I and shortly after. I didn't love it as much as so many people did, only because it took so long to really pick up for me. Like I said, it's a beautiful story, beautiful writing. I don't know, I can't really quite put my finger on why I'm not, holding it to my chest in utter love. It should have been something that I fell in love with. This is right up my alley. I love historical fiction. I love stories that take place around World War I or World War II. I think it might have been just that really, really slow beginning that I had a hard time with. I know why I had a hard time with it too. There's lots and lots and lots of poetry in this book, and I'm pretty sure it's an homage to Tennyson. And I'm not a huge fan of poetry. I don't read poetry. I mean, I have one favorite poem, W.H. Auden Funeral Blues. I love that. And the only reason I even know of that poem is because it was recited in Four Weddings and a Funeral movie. So anyways, I digress again. Lots and lots of poetry, but it's apropos. The thing that I found really surprising was that the poetry was used as a plot device, and it affected me way more than it had any business doing. I think as I'm reading the poetry, I was like, ugh, snooze. But then the way it's executed, then it was like a shot in the butt. And then the other thing that I thought was kind of, I don't know, it was fun, but eye-rolly at the same time. It's very, very British. I mean, because of the time, not only is it in England, but during 1914, we had a lot of jolly good and my good men and spot of tea and scones, that kind of thing. So that was fun, but kind of a lot. Would I recommend it? Absolutely. If any of this stuff sounds interesting to you, if it's something that you like to read about, definitely pick this one up. And anybody who recommended this book, thank you very much. I'm really glad that I read it. I wish I loved it more. So far be it for me to end on a low note. Not to say that my feelings about In Memoriam were low, but I always want to end on a high note. So I'm going to end with a 5-star read. This book took me by surprise. I loved it so much. The book I'm talking about is Where the Rivers Merge by Mary Alice Monroe. I think the only reason I picked this up is because it became available on my Libby app, I think. I can't even remember why this came onto my radar, other than, I mean, it's making its rounds. There's a lot of people who love this book. This one is a multi-generational saga that takes place in South Carolina, which is right across the bridge from us, specifically in the Ace Basin. The Ace Basin. The Ace Basin. And this spans from the early 1900s all the way to 1988. You're following mostly Eliza Rivers. Is that really true? That just hit me that her last name is Rivers, and the Ace Basin, it's capital ACE because the Ace Basin is where 3 rivers, each starting with A, C, and E respectively, come together. And I would look up the names of them, but I know that they are Native American names, and I would butcher them anyways. Anyways, the fact that these 3 rivers merge, that creates the Ace Basin, and that is where this book takes place, and then the main character's last name is Rivers. That just hit me. Did a light bulb go on over my head? You're following Eliza Rivers. You're following her life from 1908 all the way through 1988. Is that true? Yes, 1988. It opens up with Eliza being an 80-year-old woman. She's kind of the matriarch of her family, and she is very much connected to her land and the conservation of her land and all the nature and the wildlife. She is kind of up against her oldest son, I think her only son, who is all about capitalism and wanting to make money. Eliza is currently in charge of the conservation trust or something that kind of keeps her land safe. And her son believes that she's going to pass it on to him, and she knows that he has not good plans for it. And there's like conflict because Eliza no way is going to hand over the running of her land to him. And she ends up having like a conversation with her granddaughter and the granddaughter of her childhood best friend, telling her, you know, about her childhood and her growing up on this land and what it means to her and why conservation is so important to her. It kind of goes back in dual timelines as far as her struggle now with the conservatorship of her land. And I know I'm saying that wrong, but you get what I'm trying to say. And her telling her life story to her granddaughter and the granddaughter of her best friend. As she's telling her life story, you are following her from a young girl when she meets her best friend, who happens to be the daughter of her family's foreman, a black man. And Eliza Rivers' family obviously is white and very well-to-do. You know, there are certain societal expectations that are put on Eliza that she scoffs at. She's a tomboy at heart. She and her best friend, they kind of grow up together and they go to school together, learn about life together, and obviously have different experiences in life because of not only their respective races, but their respective stations in life societally. Is that a word? Societally? In society? So you learn about, you know, the Jim Crow laws, and you go through World War I, you go through the Depression and how it affects each of them, their family relationships. This is just a fantastic story, a family saga, which I love. It's related to nature and the importance of conservation and preserving wildlife. It's very well interwoven with each other, very beautifully written. I have one criticism. I listened to this book. If you don't know this, I'm about to spoil it for you. You need to be spoiled. It's not a spoiler, but you need to know this because I wish I had. This ends on kind of a cliffhanger because this is just part 1. You know how where you can look up on Goodreads or any book and it shows in parentheses if it's part of a series, even if it's the first one in a series or a duology or something, it tells you that it's not the only one. This one didn't. See if it's still the same. Nope, doesn't say. But she says at the end, part 2 to be published at a later date. And it's not even anywhere on Goodreads that it's even in the works, which I'm sure it is. But oh my God, if I'm reading the first in a series, I want to know about it. So I was a little annoyed at that because I didn't find out until the very end. So it doesn't wrap up all the things that you're waiting to find out what's going to happen. Oh my God, what's going to happen? How are they going to resolve this issue? You don't find out in this book. Hello? Oh my God. But that's the only criticism I have on this book. It's beautifully written. It is beautifully and perfectly narrated. Absolutely stunning narration. The author, Mary Alice Monroe, is a novel writer by trade, but she's very passionate about nature, and it shows in her writing, and she makes the reader care about nature and wildlife through her characters, which I think is brilliant. There's a quote, I can't remember if it's a quote in the book or in the novel, or if she says it because there's a note in the afterword about why she wrote about this stuff. And what she says, and I love it, I want to put it on a t-shirt. She says, if you care, you take care. And God, do we need that in our world today. Her passion about wildlife and nature really comes through in this novel. And if that is something that you are interested in reading about, please pick up this book. It's so beautiful. Even if you aren't, if you like a good multi-generational family saga, it takes place in the South. It's so entertaining with all the other stuff that I talked about aside. It's so entertaining. The dialogue is spot on. Just the stuff, all the stuff that Eliza goes through is super relatable, even though she comes from hoity-toity white family. So good. Can't recommend enough. I'm here to tell you that the hype is real and it is well earned. Loved this book. So that's it. Those are the books I'm going to talk to you about today. What did you think about these books? If you've read them, I hope that I have added to your TBR. It always makes my day when you say that in the comments. What books have you been reading recently? I would love to hear about them. While they might not always work for me, I absolutely love getting recommendations from all of you. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.